The Canadian Wild Turkey Federation presents
Turkey Talk
with your hosts, the guys that keep it real. From the Real Outdoor Experience, it's Carlin Riley and Ian McCleary. Stay tuned, folks. We discuss way more than just turkey hunting tips and tricks. If conservation, protection, and enhancement of the outdoors is important to you, you have come to the right place. It's go time.
3, 2, 1, let's go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the CWTF's Turkey Talk. Today we have Mike Miller from Angler and Hunter Television. Mike, I guess when you think of Mike, at least when I think of Mike, you think of bears and fishing. And we were just talking before we started the show here about how Mike's been on. And it's been a while. So welcome, Mike. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. The Zoom virtual world has taken over, and this is the way people are doing things now. And I'm excited to be here to talk to you.
Well, thanks. We're excited too. I have to say though, I'd rather be in a garage sitting around a table sipping a beverage. But I guess this is the way of the future, at least the current way that we can get things done, and it's pretty handy. So.
Or even just being able to catch up at a show like the Sportsman Show in Toronto. You know, like we've seen each other there, years, consecutively. And right. Now for the last 2 years now, we haven't had that opportunity. And it's, I miss being able to see you and some of the other kind of regular people that you always just see that, once a year for those 3 or 4 days that we're there, and it's, I miss it.
Yeah.
It's good to see you, Mike. I hope that the last COVID year hasn't been too hard on you.
No, it went by fast, that's for sure. And yeah, I like you said, I sure miss for as long as I can remember, whether it was at the International Center or down at the old exhibition place there, the Sportsman Show and the Spring Fishing Show. It's almost like it's a figment of my imagination.
Yeah.
Days and days of meeting people and talking about fishing and hunting and stuff, and it's sort of gone, right? So
yeah,
hopefully people tune in and catch up with us doing this.
Well, I think that people are for sure.
I hope the show is going to be bigger than ever. I remember going with my dad when I was just a little dude, and I think it was whatever the place was, maybe the old exhibition stadium, the conference center there. Years and years going to the Toronto Sportsman Show, and yeah, I miss it too. It's kind of been a part of that life that that in March you're going to see all your buds and get to hang out with a whole bunch of people and see all kinds of new stuff for the upcoming year. So hopefully next year.
Yeah, I hear you on that one.
I think one of the upsides for somebody in your situation, particularly in filming a show with COVID and the social distancing requirements, and got to make it really hard to be in a boat with somebody that's in your bubble. So it's nice to see you spending as much time with August as you are.
Yeah, I'm pretty fortunate. Timing's everything in life, I guess, is what they say. But August has sort of grown up with hunting and fishing, and she's at the age now where she likes hunting more than fishing, I think. So she's pretty excited that it'll be this October. She'll be taking her to test to get her hunting license. So
okay.
Excellent.
Does she have a particular sort of game in mind? I think she likes accompanying you on the bear hunts.
She loves bear hunting. Yeah, she's pretty. Last year, I did get her out. I finally harvested a turkey with her because I tried to do it since she was 3 or 4 years old. She'd come with me and sit in the blind, and never ever did I get a chance to take a turkey with her. And last year we got one, and she's pretty excited about turkey hunting this year. Unfortunately, she's going to miss it because of her age. But I kind of get the feeling turkey hunting. To get off track of the bear and that, but turkey hunting for most new hunters, I think is really popular because of the season, and also because there's so many variables involved, right? Whether you hunt out of a blind, or you kind of, you call and move to where a turkey might be. Whereas bear hunting, you're situated in a tree stand and you're there for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours. Whereas turkey hunting is a little more interactive with the game you're after. And new hunters, there's 20 or 30,000 of them seems to be, every year that pop up. A lot of new licensed hunters are avid about turkey hunting.
Well, and one of the cool things, we just spoke to Minister Mike Holland, was it last weekend, and the new season in New Brunswick. So it is expanding, and it's exciting times for turkey hunters out there.
Yeah, New Brunswick, I think one of the first shows I did when I joined up with the Federation of Anglers and Hunters and Angler Hunter TV was to go to New Brunswick because they just legalized crossbows for hunting. So we did a bear hunt out there, and I recall kind of driving into Edmundston and some of the eastern edges of the province where it kind of borders up against Maine, and I was seeing wild turkeys, and they were excited there that Maine had a turkey season, and one day New Brunswick was going to have a wild turkey season, and here it is.
All those years later. So what year was it that the crossbows became an acceptable method of hunting in New Brunswick?
I think it would have been 2012.
So pretty recent history in
Yeah.
the bigger scheme of things.
Yeah, and it's I mean, the crossbow I think gets a bad stigma because it's not you're not shooting a bow, right? It's still considered a bow, but I mean, it's easier to aim, it's easier to hold, but you got to look at broaden your horizons a little bit if you're an avid archer, an archer or someone that shoots a traditional bow. A lot of the demographic that hunts, maybe they don't have enough time to practice, or they don't have enough time to actually go hunting. Maybe they get 3 or 4 days a year, or they're like me, getting a little older and drawing back on a bow, it can be fatiguing. And a crossbow, it allows you to get out in the field, still participate in an archery hunt, and know that you're going to be pretty accurate, even if you don't practice every day with it, right? So it's a great tool. So the bad stigma a lot of people give crossbow, I think is should be maybe put in check, but I shoot a compound still. August, my daughter, she shoots a compound, and she's, really excited to start shooting things. But I have to tell her the same thing that I just mentioned. If you're going to shoot your compound bow at a live animal, you're going to practice a lot, because there's way more things to go wrong shooting a compound bow than can go wrong shooting a crossbow. Right?
It's so funny. I've never really understood the sort of the stigma that does get attached to crossbows, because you're absolutely right. It exists out there from the traditional archers, and they I guess the argument is that it gives an unfair advantage, but you're still flinging a stick at something 30 yards away, and that's the hunting piece. Like, you get in within 30 yards of a whitetail or a mature turkey, like, you've hunted that animal. And if you can get that with a sharpened stick with feathers on it, I think you're doing pretty good.
And listen, I'm going to be the first guy. I mean, we've got a show coming up, a new episode coming up in a few weeks, where I miss a deer with my crossbow at 30 yards, simply because I didn't range it.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I thought, oh, that thing's 20 yards from me, and it was actually 30, and I put an arrow 1.5 inches right underneath its breast. Yeah. And I missed a deer at 30 yards. So, it's not a guarantee. It's not a gimme. So it goes into what you're saying. You can still miss with a crossbow.
Oh, I don't believe that it's an unfair advantage, for sure. And you made a great point about people that are getting into the woods, 3 or 4 times a year. Are they going to have the opportunity or the location to go out and take those, 50 shots a day for the weeks heading into the season, to make sure that they can hit, a heart-sized target at up to 40 yards every time?
And no, compound that with a year's worth of COVID and staying at home. And I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm gonna say 2 out of 3 hunters in Ontario probably live in urban environments where where are you going to shoot a bow? Where are you going to practice? A lot of areas you can't practice. If you live in the city, you're not practicing with your bow. But I know my crossbow, once I sighted it in last year and put it away, if I get it out and shoot it once, chances are really good that the crosshair on that scope is where I set it, and I'm going to shoot efficiently with it.
We did a review of the Excalibur Assassin when it first came out. Carlo and I have been Excalibur guys our entire life, and I had an Exo Mag. Carlin has an Exo set. Actually, no, it's the other way around. I had the Exo set. He had the Exo Mag, but Carlin hadn't shot his in over a year. Pulled it out while we were doing the review and hit like a bottle cap at 25 yards.
Yeah.
Like just bing, and sort of the beauty of it, And when we take a look at how we've evolved as hunters, so 5,000 years ago, we had a sharpened stick and a loincloth, and that's how we went out and did it, right? So basically everything, even more modern longbows are an evolution from that original place. So where you land on that scale doesn't give you the right to judge the rest of us or sort of another. We've got to stand together, I think. And unless
we're all hunters, right? We're all going hunting, and we're all out there. We're all out there to try and actually take down an animal to eat.
Yeah.
So if you're up for taking your chances with a compound bow or a long bow or a crossbow or whatever it might be, hats off to you and good luck. So,
yeah, no, so we such a good point about us all, sort of banding together and being supportive as opposed to trying to knock each other down. That's funny.
One of the things I like about the crossbows is it just opens up so many opportunities for those that are maybe in a wheelchair, or for kids, or for older people. It opens that whole demographic of people that are not able to use a compound or a long bow. And I know my kids have shot my crossbow many times, and Connor took a really nice buck here a few years ago with the crossbow. His first deer out, he shoots a beautiful big buck. Ian was there that day, and
the
opportunity. yeah, just the opportunities that they present for everybody. So it's a great tool, like you said.
Yeah, and I mean, the disadvantage when you're hunting isn't usually the equipment you're using. It's the animal that doesn't smell you, doesn't see you. Do you give yourself away? I mean, those are all the factors that change things.
Right.
Whether or not you can shoot 30 yards versus 50 yards really isn't the difference maker.
Right.
So, it's hunting.
Yeah.
And you get out there and do it. And I mean, one of the hardest things I do is try and shoot turkeys with my crossbow. I've missed probably 10 times more than I've ever hit, whether it's taken off feathers or whether I've missed completely, or who knows what it is. But it's a small target, and, I've missed it. And I probably would have missed twice as many more if I was shooting my compound bow.
That's right. Well, you know what? And it's funny because some turkey hunting in particular, there are some blind setups or some places that just aren't conducive to using a compound bow,
Right.
and that's that is really challenging. And my hat off to any hunter who's able to pull that off. Getting a turkey with a compound or a longbow is
you got it.
You've done a great job there. Funny, I saw a video that you had posted, and you shot a turkey with your crossbow, and there were two toms had come in, and you shot the one, and then you almost literally had to push the other one off of its buddy.
That was last year. That was last year, and I think those birds. I was back in the woods there, and turkey hunting is interesting, right? Because no two experiences I find are the same, and the birds, can do 180 from a character, right? One bird can be, real spooky, and another bird will come in and try and fight you. And that bird, I don't think they'd ever seen a human before, because I was going in and out to a bear bait, and I was running across these birds on the way in and out in this little sort of sand pit. And I thought, I gotta keep an eye on these birds and see what happens. And sure enough, like you said, I arrowed the one bird, and we went over and expired. And the other tom that was there would peck at him and jump on him and peck all the way to where he went. And then finally, I got over there to it, and this bird was challenging me like, "Hey, I'm the boss. I'm the boss here.
Some of this,
you better get out of here, or you're gonna end up like him." So, I don't know. I literally have to shoo that bird away. You're right.
It's funny. I wonder where that would fall on the regulations. You know, in Ontario, we can only take one bird a day. You can take two in a season, but only one in a day.
Right.
The second one is in self-defense. Do you think that would be allowed?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't loaded going over there, so
Better have the video camera rolling for that one.
My bare hands.
One of the things that I particularly liked about that show is that you were talking about finding it was dust bowls, and it was a dust bowl area, and you did very, very little calling, but you just knew that because it was a dust bowl, and you knew that, you know, in the afternoons, because you understand the turkey's habits, they're going to be coming back to this area to dust. You set up a ground blind, and again did very little calling. We just sat and waited, and you couldn't have written the script more perfectly.
Yeah, and it's, you know, there's a lot of situations. I think, you know, I'm like anybody else. I watch hunting shows. I grew up watching TV. These guys hunting and fishing and doing all sorts of stuff and doing tricks. And one thing you don't really learn about turkey hunting is the actual behaviors of the birds. Right? You learn the basic calls, and you learn, you know, how to do it, but you don't really learn how they react to these calls, and at what time of day do they react to certain calls, and what time early in the season and late in the season. There's so many different calls and calling patterns you can use. But there's also travel routes that birds use. They don't just randomly walk around like chickens in a farm field. You know, they have escape routes. They have roosting areas, a secondary roosting area. There's so many variables about turkeys that you don't hear or learn about, and dust bowl is a small part of that. You know, if you find an area where there's dust bowl, chances are pretty good if you watch it long enough, at some point in the day, they're coming there. So,
funny that you mentioned that, because it's so tempting to just think that turkey hunting is just about going out in the woods, calling, striking a gobbler, and calling him into you.
And then at 8 a.m., if there's none there, you go home.
Right.
I guess my shift's over.
Yeah. No, well, that's when I think the real turkey hunters are, you know, taking a break maybe before going back out. Or that's actually a great time in the woods, because so many of those people have quit and left for the day. But as soon as I started hunting turkeys, more like I was hunting deer and patterning them, as well as the calling. But as soon as you combine the two of them together, the success ratio went up astronomically.
Yeah, and you know, as far as being, I mean, we've been able to hunt turkeys in Ontario now for quite a while. So there are some probably, you know, so-called experts out there, but I mean, you learn every year. And you know, in the process of filming TV shows, I've learned a lot as well, and I've had way more success calling birds in the afternoon than I had in the morning. Because what I found in the morning, especially in the early season, is when the birds drop out of a roost and they group together, the toms really haven't established a who's who, so they stay together well into the morning and sort of fight and hen peck and chase the hens around and fight. Where the jakes sort of just sit back and they watch all this going on. To try and call one of those birds, I found is sometimes futile. You know, It's almost a waste of time. And then in the afternoon, once they sort themselves out and the fighting's all over, the boys that got, you know, a bit of a lower hierarchy wander off, and you can draw those birds in. Whereas late in the season, you know, it's fair game. They drop out of a tree, there's no hens around, and you call, usually Tom's coming running looking. So, yeah, those are just some of the small things I've learned over the years turkey hunting, but it's all from being out in the field and not necessarily just sitting in a blind, shooting a turkey opening day and going home, which is what the appearance is when you watch it on TV. Right? Right. Oh, that took 10 minutes.
Yeah, just go out, call them a couple of times, shoot them. That's it. Nothing to this.
That's funny. We had a podcast with Keith Beasley a few weeks ago, and you know, we were discussing that the time of day, and we all agreed, you know, early morning is one of the best times, if not the best time in the bush, and waking up with all the birds, and you can hear all the gobbling going on. And they said, you know, that really makes for great TV. However, you know, 10 to 2 is probably the best time to hunt. And the more people we talk to, the more people reiterate that is kind of the time zone that everybody has started to favor. but as far as taking birds, but I love being in the bush in the mornings and listening
It is
to all
great.
that. It is crazy. It's
Yeah, well,
so fun.
being out there when the world in the woods wakes up is a great experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Nothing like
yeah,
it.
it's one I look forward to. You know, some days I don't even care if a turkey comes out if the morning's right. You know, I want to sit there and take it all in.
I think I'd be pretty disappointed. Well, I have too many times, but when you go out into the woods like that and you just don't hear a gobble all morning, you know, and they'll just clam up some days, or something could have happened the night before that pushed them off the roost and they're scattered. But to go out and be there as the world's waking up and then not hearing a gobble, that to me is like, that's a disappointing hunt. But if I can hear them gobbling and talking and they don't come out to me, or I don't even see them, I don't care. I still had a great morning.
Yeah, it's a pretty humbling activity, turkey hunting, right? I mean, on a morning like that, like you said, you hear them and you're like, oh, this is going to be good. They're going to be coming from all directions, and then nothing happens. You don't see a bird, right?
Yeah.
And then the shoe was on the other foot. A few years ago, I did a hunt where I didn't hear a thing all morning, and I thought, oh, I'm going to go back, get the truck, and pack up my gear. And I drove the truck out into the field. And as I was driving my truck into the field, there's a bunch of hens down in the corner. I'm thinking, oh, what's going on? So I actually parked my truck down a tree line, snuck back to my blind, and got in and started calling. Of course, the hens came over, and then 20 minutes later, I had two big toms come out. Neither of them gobbled once, and I shot one of those birds. It took me giving up, getting my truck, starting to pack up, to say, oh, there's the birds. They just appeared, right? So there's no, like you said, I mean, you could hear every bird in the woods gobble in the morning and be excited about it and have nothing happen. And then you could hear nothing in the morning and be discouraged and pack your stuff up. And guess what? You turn your back and the turkeys are there.
If you want guarantees, go to the get a butterball.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Mike, your evolution as a turkey hunter would probably mirror, you know, Carlin's and I's. We're all similar ages, and you know, back in the early '90s, I think you were living in Peterborough. You went to Fleming, if I recall.
That's right. Yeah.
And we didn't have turkeys, you know, around when we were growing up. I remember when I saw my very first one, and I think that would have been in the late '80s. But I didn't start turkey hunting until probably 93, 94. That would have been when I had to take the course, and you know, then when I started doing it. So when did you start?
The first season opened in 1990, right?
Something like that. It might have been 89. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. I don't have any facts in front of me. I should have been. I failed again. But no, you're right. Yeah, it was 90. I think I might have a picture here of the first turkey I ever shot. And it was, yeah. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah,
it's a crappy picture from like one of those wind-up cameras you used to get at the drugstore, right? But it was a freezing cold morning, and I'd never turkey hunted before. I don't know if this is on the same line of the topic you were getting on. Sorry if I'm rambling, but 84 they introduced the wild turkey, and I recall as a kid, we had a cottage out north of Belleville, and driving across the 401 and seeing turkeys around Trenton in the late 80s. Thinking, wow, there's actually one of those turkeys that they like. They only let like 275 of these birds go. And I started seeing them on the side of the highway and stuff around Trenton, and I thought, this is fantastic. I'm going to get to hunt these. And I worked at Barclays, the outdoor store in Oshawa, you know, 88, 89, I was working there, and we had this wall of turkey calls and stuff, right? So there wasn't even a turkey season yet. And I thought, I was buying all of these calls and going home and learning how to use them for a season that we didn't even have. So you figure that part out, right? I knew it was coming. So after seeing these birds on the road and working in a hunting store, I bought these calls and learned how to use them, thinking one day I'm going to try and harvest me a turkey.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It's funny that you mentioned Barclays. I also remember Ganyons in
right.
Back, you know.
Well, Ganyons is in the building where Barclays used to be.
It's going back an awful lot of years. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So you went from being a tournament fisherman, working at Barclays, you studied at Fleming. How did you wind up involved with the Federation of Anglers and Hunters?
That's, you know, it's a kind of a crazy journey. I get asked that a lot, you know, like some people that you meet on the street or never, they might have seen me on TV or wherever, and they say, you know, how did you get that job? And I guess it's kind of like, you know, a musician, you know, a musician comes out and they say, oh, they're an overnight success, but that guy was probably playing in greasy bars and in shady areas, you know, that you wouldn't even think of going for decades, playing gigs somewhere, and they finally got discovered, right? So tournament fishing is what I thought I'm going to be the guy that goes and fishes the bass net. Well, that never happened, right? But I pursued that, and I did it for 10 years. And by chance, I reconnected with an old buddy of mine, P.D. Bowman, and he kind of reintroduced me to the brothers Viola, and we kind of had a sit down, and I was producing my own sort of TV show for a local community channel back then. And, we were doing a pretty good job of it, and we were working actually alongside Dave Mercer, co-producing his stuff.
Yeah.
And
Chex TV.
yeah, it was Chex TV and the new VR up in Barrie. And anyway, we started, you know, we got some traction with this, and then I ended up that Angelo Reno hired me because Reno was looking to retire, and they needed a sort of a third wheel there to replace him. So I was all in, you know. I said, let's turn everything upside down and change everything around so people kind of bring their attention back to the Fishing Canada show, and we'll introduce a new personality. And I did that. I was with those guys for almost 7 years. And at the time, I figured I've made it, you know. This is what I wanted to do. Coming out of high school, I wanted to be a TV fishing guy, and I'm here. Out of the blue, I get a phone call from Mike Reeder at the OFAH, and he says, "Hey, Mike, you know, how's life? What's going on?" I said, "Well, you know, everything's great." Had a little girl. He said, "You open to any you know, new ideas?" I said, "Of course, I'm open to it." He goes, "Well, Cam just came in and told us he's moving on, and you know, we thought he could take over production of a TV show on short notice. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Time and place, you know, let's meet."
Yeah.
And so I met with Mike, and I met with Angelo Lombardo, who's the executive director now, and we kind of hashed out some plans and ideas. And I took the gig in 2011, and here we are 10 years later, and it's all a blur. It really is all a blur. Like, I'm talking, you know, we're almost going back 30 years here, sort of fishing and hunting for a living, and it really is all a blur. It all just came at me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Definitely one of the more prolific, you know, certainly in the Canadian TV landscape of shows out there. I certainly remember watching that years back, and it's great to see you being as successful as you have been. Has there been a highlight over the last decade?
Well, you know, I mean, there's a lot of highlights, that's for sure. It's interesting, when I was doing the Fishing Canada show, people didn't know I liked hunting, right? It wasn't, you know, hunting wasn't one of those things where you had a chance to sort of share your knowledge or talk about with people other than guys you hunt with. And one of my drawbacks of doing that program was I got very little time to turkey hunt because our May, June filming season was so hectic. So it was like, I got to squeeze it in and try and shoot a turkey on a guy's farm I know where there might not even be turkeys, to now all of a sudden, 10 years later, I get to actually try and go out and hunt for a living. And the highlight is, you know what, deer hunting and turkey hunting, I was always passionate about. But But now doing this, it's it's like someone laying out a deck of cards. Hey, we know you like turkey and deer hunting, but you need to hunt bears, you need to hunt caribou, you need to hunt ducks, grouse, woodcock, rabbits, cormorants, you name it.
Yeah.
So going from, you know, an avid hunter to someone that now has to become proficient at hunting all sorts of different game species, it was like, this is going to be overwhelming. But the highlight is, I think I've done a pretty good job of, you know, going out there and actually, you know, from caribou in the Arctic to cormorants on the Fourth Lakes. I think I've, you know, I'm pretty, I don't know what the word would be, but I feel pretty accomplished that I've been able to go out and do all the things and share it with an audience. That would be the highlight.
I think probably the biggest testament is your ability to balance the work and home life piece. Because I think that there's a lot of people that go out and they can go on, you know, 40 4 or 5 day hunts per year, but their personal life's a gong show.
Yeah, well, you know, and I, you know, this is a lot of people meeting on the list, but to compound that, I'm a single parent, right? Like I'm raising August, you know, 80% of the time on my own. So during the school year, my hunting time is, you know, after I drop her off at school or daycare, like I'm going back over the 10 years, right? Like there was a lot of juggling involved, and you know, luckily, you know, my parents helped out over those years, and luckily August took an interest in this, and she was sort of glad to come out and sit in the ground with me and look for animals. So yeah, it's, you know, it isn't easy, and I try and keep myself grounded also to the point where you know, I'm like everybody else, whether you get 2 weeks or 10 days or a weekend here and there to go hunting. I try. That's how we work our trips. Like I can't take 7 and 10 day excursions and pass on animals that come in front of the camera because of I have the luxury of doing it. You know, if I have 3 days to go hunting and I work at, you know, whether I work in a factory or I'm a police officer or I'm a school teacher, if I'm out hunting and a spike horn or a 10-point deer comes by me and I have 3 days to hunt, well, chances are pretty good I'm pulling the trigger on the one that comes in front of me, right? So and I try and get that message across. You know, we can't all we have the luxury of saying, nah, you know, maybe next year I'll get a bigger one. But, if you're going hunting and you're going out in the woods to harvest a game animal, this is what it's all about.
Well, it's a big deal. And I mean, I think growing up experiences are like so many others. You know, we're growing up in Ontario, and, you know, we didn't see a lot of deer, you know, and to even see antlers over the course of your hunting week, like that was really something. But, you know, being able to fill a tag, that was really the goal. And if you were fortunate enough to have a doe tag, it literally was you know, if you see a deer, we can take it. And it was, well, I mean, that was hunting, you know, 30 years ago.
That is hunting for in Ontario, especially Southern Ontario, is one of the most densely populated areas in North America. People lose perspective of that, right? You know, you've got 12 million people in Southern Ontario, to take a few, and a few major highways running through all of this farmland and woodland, and it's accessible to so many hunters that, like you said, to even see a deer with a set of antlers is a miracle some people, right? You know, and that's why, you know, getting a doe tag is a lottery. Getting a buck tag, everybody can have one, because guess what? Chances are you're not seeing one.
Yeah, right.
But if you go out west, and it's the opposite, right? They have so many does that you can get 2 doe tags, but shoot the buck usually, you know, in the Midwest U.S. they have limits on deer size, manage their herds. So it's almost the polar opposite here in Ontario, and it's a real challenge.
There are some states where you have to harvest a doe before you're allowed to shoot a buck. And that is such a shift from what we're used to. It's just like,
yeah, well, we are at the northern reaches of their territory, like they'll do.
yeah,
They don't survive well in heavy winters. But the further north you get, the more a heavy winter can put a hurt on the population. And down in the Midwest and in some of those states, you can go and see 50 to 150 deer in a cornfield in one evening, and it's just mind-boggling to see how many deer they have. So the farmers are like, yeah, you want to come and shoot those, you go right ahead.
yeah.
You can shoot 2, 3, you can keep buying doe tags in some of those states. So Ontario's a challenging place to hunt. I mean, fishing not so much, because we have a lot available to us. We're sort of a fishing mecca, but whitetail deer hunting is a challenge. So hats off to anybody that fills a deer tag in Ontario.
What's your favorite species to hunt?
You know what? I mean, since the reintroduction of the spring bear hunt, it's been something like right now I've got 3 baits out, and I've got cell cameras on the baits. And from the moment I get up, if I get up in the middle of the night to go to a washroom or get a drink of water, I'm checking my phone to see if I'm getting bears. Bear hunting has just overwhelmed me. I love hunting bears, and we're lucky because it's sort of a long season, right? You get over a month to actually do this, whereas the deer camp, the traditional deer camp that I've taken part in since the day I could hunt, I was 15 or 16. That's like Christmas that week. The lead up to deer season, the gun season is pretty special.
Yeah.
And I love being there, but I think bear hunting as an activity, I like bear hunting more. One, you encounter more animals, whether they be bears, whether they be fishers or raccoons or different birds or critters that come in. But to get 20 yards from a black bear or a sow with cubs and watch them, it's a real experience. Where when you're deer hunting, I've gone a week of deer hunting and not even seen a deer over my lifetime. So I like being in the woods. Don't get me wrong. I love deer hunting, but bear hunting, it's the experience of bear hunting. Nothing beats it for me.
There's two pieces there that I want to touch on. The preparation that goes into bear hunting, and like you're setting out baits right now, and you're like all of that process that goes to taking that shot and recovering the bear. The weeks preceding that shot that are most enjoyable to me, and such a big part of that process. When you think back to those deer camps, there might be a weekend in September where you go into, we call it a wood weekend, getting all the firewood for the week, and there might be some grouse or rabbit hunting, but it's more, some cards and camaraderie in the evenings. But that's it for getting ready for the deer season. While some people are working on firewood, other guys are out there, making sure the stands are still safe. But
or cutting a shooting lane or trimming out some bushes. Yeah,
that's it. And it's totally changed now. More for bow hunting. Obviously, there's a process with deer also, but I do like that process with bears. No question about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm slinging, from donuts, cookies, candy to molasses to whatever I'm bringing into that woods. I mean, it's a lot of work, but the payoff's fantastic. I mean, because I mean, in my career as a hunter, until I actually started baiting bears and bear hunting, I could probably count on one hand how many bears I've seen in the woods. Like they don't just roam around, they don't graze, and they're very elusive, and they're masters of their domain. So when you're deer hunting, you'd see the odd one if there was a push going on. You might see a bear busted through the woods, or maybe come out to some sweet stuff you put out to the deer. But I'd never really seen bear other than baiting them. And when I was young, when I got out of school, I worked at a lodge in Northern Ontario before they canceled the spring bear hunt. And one of the jobs was you have to, when you were out guiding and that on your days off, you'd have to run some of the bear baits for the outfitter. And I'd seen a few bears that way. and in fall bear hunting during the period where there was no spring bear hunt. But it wasn't the same. You know, bears don't come to baits in the fall the same as they do in the spring. It's you know, once they start hitting that bait in the spring, it's like timing. Every minute that goes by after that sort of sun sets, it's like, holy smokes, it's quiet in the woods now. Something's good, you know. And when the big black bear appears and it's so quiet, it's such a wonderful feeling.
When I was really little, we used to all pile into the station wagon, and my dad would take us to the dump. So we could,
yes, like a scene from a John Candy movie, right?
Yeah, but we used to do that, and I still remember what it actually felt like. You know, being, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old and actually seeing that first bear. And then, you know, fast forward 20 years to actually hunting them. And I was fortunate. I had a family friend who owned 2 Tim Hortons. So I could get all I know it was, well, we're not allowed to do that anymore, but, you know, back in the 90s, we could, you know, dumpster dive or get, you know, you know, bags of donuts. What a great bait. Donuts and carrots. It was fantastic.
Yeah, unbelievable.
What's your secret weapon for bear baiting? You willing to share?
Yeah, well, there's you know, there's lots of different methods. You hear lots of different things. You know, I'm fortunate enough that a couple of the places I have access to, I can get in with a trailer and my ATV and bring in some heavier sort of bait where, you know, a lot of the stuff that's remote, you're looking for options that are light, right? Stuff that's not hard to carry in. But I usually set up one barrel with some logs and obstructions in it that make it hard for the bear to get in, and then I'll set up another barrel with holes drilled in it that they can roll around or shake, and it keeps them coming once they empty out sort of the cache of the big barrel that they can get at. And it's purely just molasses and the cheapest dog food you can buy. And it's Old Roy. Old Roy's the magic. Walmart special Old Roy dog food and molasses in a shaker barrel. They, you know, it's probably the molasses that they're coming for, but I mean, you mix it with that dog food and it's all stuck to it, right? But they clean that barrel. Like, I've got great shots of bears rolling with barrel around. Looks like you're doing yoga on it.
Yeah.
Just to get one little last kernel of dog food out of that thing.
Yeah.
If you want to keep bears around and you can't bait on you know, on a 2-3 day basis, if you have to wait 5 or 7 days to get back to your bait, that shaker barrel with dog food and molasses is really good. But donuts, if you can get your hands on them, are still the go-to. You know, I've got 3 or 4 different, you know, outtakes from shows and stuff we've filmed over the years, but I can count a lot of the bears. The first donut they steal out of that bin is a toasted coconut donut.
Yeah.
For some reason, out of all the jellies and all the chocolates and all the other stuff, they always want to sneak off of that toasted coconut first, right? So, whether it's dog food, molasses, or just donuts, that's sort of anything sweet, basically. You know, bears love carbohydrates.
Yeah.
Kind of like me.
You know, talking about the weight and being able to get into some, because obviously hunting bears, you got to get, you know, a little bit more remote than sort of normal, or I don't know, you got to be able to get into backwoods, and filling up bags with popcorn are it's light, and you can get a barrel full of it and carry it in without too much effort.
Yeah, and another thing with popcorn is you can also pour the sweet stuff on it after you get there, so it's not a sticky mess trying to transport it. Right?
Yep.
And that's one of the things about bear baiting is the sweet syrup and gunk and stuff you got all over you. I mean, everything by the end of bear baiting season, whether it's my Mills machete or my gloves or my handlebars and my 4-wheeler, they're covered in sweet stuff.
Yeah. Now, you had said that with the reintroduction of the spring hunt, that really did sort of re-whet the appetite of going out and baiting, because it is a little bit different in the spring than in the fall. How active was the Federation of Anglers and Hunters working with the ministry to reestablish that spring hunt?
I know I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna probably maybe offend somebody or but if you're bear hunting in Ontario currently or in the last, 5-6 years since they brought it back, and you're not a member of the OFAH, shame on you. Simply because since they canceled this hunt, our organization has been advocating for it with legal fees, with paperwork, with science, you name it, and pushing for it since the day they canceled it. Since prior to the day they canceled it, when they were discussing canceling it, it was a barn fire that the OFAH knew that they had to start pouring water on. And I mean, here we are, this is the first official year that it's fully reinstated. The pilot programs are over, and we've got the spring bear hunt back. So single-handedly, the OFAH, I think, is responsible for that. And if you're out there bear hunting and you're not a member, I mean, that's kind of insulting, to me and to all the members and to all the people that work so hard to bring it back.
It's an easy thing, I think, for too many people to forget because it happens just sort of behind the scenes, and that's for new people coming in particular that don't remember the discussions that went into the decision to cancel the hunt and, frankly, the uproar from the hunting community because it wasn't really science-based. It was to appease people that didn't want hunting. And it was the efforts of the Federation of Anglers and Hunters that brought that back, like the efforts of the Federation working with the NWTF to bring turkeys back into Ontario.
Correct. Yeah.
Like you need organizations to help keep this, sport or activity of ours moving forward. So
yeah, you kind of named it. It's sort of all the problem's gone, or we've solved the problem. Who cares anymore? Or you always have to remember, well, what can happen and what will happen if you sit on your laurels. And whether it's Remembrance Day from World War I, World War II, and then all of our veterans, you have to always keep that in perspective. And I mean, the OFAH has always been out there advocating for the rights of anglers and hunters and trappers, no matter what it involves. Whether it's firearms, whether it's advocating for keeping boat ramps open during COVID. I mean, there's so many things, right? And if an organization like that doesn't have membership, doesn't have support, they lose their voice, right? The government's not going to care anymore what anglers and hunters say. So whether it's the CWTF or the OFAH or any organization, it's in every hunter, every angler's best interest to support these organizations. Whether you're a member or you just donate, to keep them funded and up and running, because I'm telling you right now, the next cancellation or the next something is coming. And we always have to be ready. And if you're out there and you put your hands in the air and you say, how could this have happened? Or why did this happen? You're probably not a member of an organization that represents our original hunters.
Yeah, no, such a good point. And so it was originally it was back in the 1920s, I think. It was the Ontario Federation of Anglers that had started. It was about 20 years later that they became the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters. Yeah. But it's always been an advocacy group, not just to lobby and support on behalf of hunters, but working with wildlife management, groups to reintroduce species to different areas, or managing populations, or dealing with fisheries and
invasive species. We have the invasive species awareness program. So we are the go-to for information. We have field staff and technicians that go out and monitor invasive species, that try and eradicate invasive species. You look at the elk. The Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters was instrumental in bringing elk back to Ontario, to a population that's now huntable. Atlantic salmon in Lake Ontario, those were extirpated 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, in the 1900s. And now there's a fishable population of Atlantic salmon in Lake Ontario. All these things happen through the workings of this organization, and a lot of people don't know the workings of the organization. If you see it, at the beginning of our program, or you drive by it on the highway, it's a big building. But in that building, there's biologists, staff that work for memberships. They take care of members. There's government affairs officials, people that deal with the government every day. I mean, there's so many aspects of looking after the outdoors, whether you're putting a shovel in the ground and enhancing the stream, or you're filming a television program to promote hunting and fishing, or you're advocating for the rights of anglers and hunters. That building has got so many people in it doing these things that it's almost one of the largest and most sort of profound organizations in North America that encompasses all things hunting and fishing. I mean, the CWTF and the NWTF or VU, they're focused on one species or one aspect of the outdoors, where this organization we've got our hands in everything. So it's a pretty big organization, and it's a pretty important organization. I think what people need to know.
I like that you guys look at the whole picture. So the introduction of a cormorant season, I think, is a great example of being able to see that big picture. Okay, why are fish stocks declining? Well, because all the bait fish are gone. Why are the bait fish gone? Well, we've got this bird that is eating 2 or 3 pounds of bait fish a day, and there's billions of them. So
right.
How long can that go on before our fishing or our fishery is severely impacted? Well, the fishery got severely impacted, and it was efforts by OFAH that got the cormorant recognized as a species that needs to be hunted.
Right. And what compounds that is the diversity of the areas, the biodiversity of the areas where they colonize. And, in a traditional population that might have been here 40, 50, 100 years ago, it was balanced. But it's out of balance, right? They've come back in such numbers that they're like snow geese. If you go into the Arctic in the spring and you look at snow geese, there's millions and millions of these birds on the ground, to the point where it looks like the ground's covered in snow. But these are birds that are nesting in mass populations, and they're ever expanding because they really don't have much predation. So snow geese is a good example or comparable to the cormorant, because they're expanding the snow goose seasons for hunting, because the Arctic the pressure on the Arctic ecosystem can't handle all these birds. And our lakes and rivers can't handle thousands of these birds colonizing them, decimating islands, decimating shorelines with their nesting areas. And that affects plants, that affects other birds that nest there. It affects the quality of the water. It affects so many things. So harvesting these birds and controlling them is just part of what we as humans have to do with the decisions we've made to live on this planet. If you want to pave it, build on it, and work and play there, you also have to take care of it. Yeah. So as anglers and hunters, our organization, we make sure we take care of it.
It's one of the common messages that we try to speak to people all the time about. It's one thing to be a hunter, but if you don't support the organizations that support us as hunters, anglers, outdoors people, not only in Canada, Ontario, but Canada and North America,
sure,
then, we're going down a bad road, and sometime, we're gonna feel the effects if we don't support these organizations. So we're always talking about the CWTF. If you're a turkey hunter, you should be a member of the CWTF. And for us, for our deer hunting party, we're all members of OFAH and have been for years and years. People need to get involved, and it's another common theme that we've talked about a number of times, is hunters are really not great advocates for ourselves. Either you're apathetic, or maybe you're way too far the other way and get into throwing insults. But it's important.
Ready to.
Yeah, it's important to get out there and have those discussions with people that You're not going to change some anti-hunters' minds, maybe, but there are people that are in between that don't understand what we do. And we've always had conversations with people. And by the end of it, they're like, hey, you know what? Thanks so much for explaining that to me, because I had no idea.
Right. I mean, hunting itself is a government regulated activity. You have to get a license just like getting your driver's license.
Right.
And there's always going to be naysayers, but here's, the startling fact that kind of really irritates me is there's over 400,000 licensed hunters in Ontario. And I can guarantee you the OFAH membership and the CWEF membership doesn't equate to a third of that.
Right.
Or maybe a quarter. A quarter of all the hunters in this province aren't members of organizations that look out for them. So who should we be pushing our message towards? Not people that don't hunt or anti-hunters. We should be pushing it towards hunters that, hey, come on, wake up and smell the coffee here. $25 or $35 a year or whatever it is isn't going to break the bank. But when it comes time for you to be represented, when they say, hey, guess what? No more deer hunting, or no more shotguns, or no more whatever it is.
Yep.
You're going to go and stick your head in the sand and say someone should have been looking out for us. And
yeah,
our organizations are the ones looking out for people. So with 400,000 people, if you're watching right now, get your wallets out and start supporting organizations that represent us.
Absolutely.
The insurance alone winds up making it worth the price of admission. And anybody that hunts on somebody else's private land, you should be a member, if for no other reason than to be able to have that insurance coverage that comes with your membership.
Yeah.
And that not only is that going to help you get permission, because every landowner there is afraid of liability and suits and stuff like that, but to be able to say, I'm a member of the Federation, I am insured for any of these types of accidents or all those things that you as a landowner are afraid of, we've already got that covered. And like, I'm an insurance guy, and that's you can't buy something like that for $35 a year. So if that's your only reason, buy it for that reason. But there's so many others like you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, even with Lyme disease now, we have coverage for Lyme disease. If you come in contact with a tick and you get Lyme disease and you're a member, we're going to look after you. So there's the reasons far outweigh the reasons to be a member, far outweigh the reasons to not be a member.
Well said. Coming back to cormorants, I was not able to see. I know you did an episode on cormorant hunting, but I wasn't able to see it. How do you go about hunting a cormorant?
So that's that was part of the process of actually getting a season. When they first announced that they were talking about a year-round season, and a lot of organizations were concerned about the breeding colonies of other birds and disrupting breeding season. So they put the season in the fall. And the good thing about the cormorant hunt is they roost in the same place. So their nesting colonies is our roosting area. So dawn and dusk, they roost all night in these roosting areas. So, and they're not hard to find. Just look around for something that looks like someone dropped napalm on it and burnt the scorched earth, and there's a cormorant colony.
Covered it with white top.
Everything's covered in white ash. That's where they live. So that's a good place to start. Now, my initial approach was, let's set up a blind on this island and just hunt them as they come to and from it. But we went on to an island to do this, and the smell, I don't know if it's methane or it burns your nostrils. Yeah. So it was unbearable to actually set foot on the island, and everything was covered in white. And I thought, this isn't good. We're gonna have to wear like hazmat suits to hunt here. I don't think they come in camouflage. So that was, we 86 that idea. So the plan then was, okay, well, let's just go out in our boat, like we're going fishing, and you could do it in a john boat or a duck boat or whatever you want, and go upwind of the island and just let the wind drift us towards the island, and when the birds get nervous and spook, that's when we're gonna start shooting.
Okay.
And it's perfectly legal. A lot of people say, oh, you should be shooting off your boat, but in the regs, if you look at from the Canadian Wildlife Service or the Ontario hunting regs, you can hunt from a boat as long as it's not under power.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it doesn't have to be anchored. There's all these questions that come up. As long as the boat's not under power, you can hunt them. So it's just, my Lund was a perfect hunting raft, right? We simply drifted upwind, killed the engine, took a spot on the deck and drifted down. And when the birds start dropping out of the trees, they can't fly away like a duck. They actually have to soar and pick up some speed. So they drop out of the trees. And when they're dropping, you can really get a good bead on them. And they're not a hard bird to miss. So it was exciting. In hindsight, I wish I had prepped more for it. But as long as we have a cormorant season, I'm going to be out there hunting them.
Yeah.
It is pretty cool. And, I just sort of did the old dig a hole and bury them to get rid of them, which is what they recommend in the regulations. But the guy that likes to eat pros in me, I'm going to try. I think next year we're going to prepare a meal with them. Because I've talked to people on the East Coast, Newfoundland and stuff like that eat them. So if they eat them in Newfoundland, we can eat them here.
Slow cooker, maybe.
Yeah. The beak a little bit fishy, probably a little bit oily, but I think that they'll be edible. Thanks. Sormagansers and seagulls if you're really hungry.
I'm thinking like a jerky kind of a meat. Smoke them so they get the oil out of them and see what happens.
Yeah, well, you know what? Good for you. It's funny. I was told at a very young age, if you kill it, you eat it.
Yeah, we had a kid out in a hunt with us years ago, and I said, "There's a porcupine. There's the open season on porcupines." I said, "If you want to shoot it, you go ahead, but you're eating it." And we shot a porcupine and cleaned it and ate it, and I'll never shoot another porcupine.
That's when I stopped shooting groundhogs. Because that's a dark and oily meat because I would have thought that, okay, it's a groundhog. It's not eating anything
it's like a rabbit, right? It has the same diet
or anything like that, but they don't.
They don't move too much, right? So
didn't taste like a rabbit.
They're a little lumpy.
Oh, that's fun. So, Mike, we asked for an hour, and you've given us more than that. And it's we could talk all afternoon about different
things. Saying that's the good thing about hunting.
Well, right, and that's we haven't even really just swapped stories yet. But what's on the horizon for Angler and Hunter Television and Mike Miller and OFAH?
Well, on the horizon, I'm hoping COVID goes away so we can travel a little bit and do what we used to do without trying to do it in our backyards. So short term, we're gonna try and fill a couple turkey tags and fill a bear tag, and take a road trip this summer. Maybe drive up to Kenora and shoot some shows on our way up. Get outside again, and hopefully after we've all been vaccinated, enjoy the province the way it was meant to be enjoyed. And long term, I'm really looking forward to my daughter getting a hunting license, and me being the cameraman and seeing her, harvest some animals, or at least get up close and personal with some critters, and get the perspective of a kid doing it for the first time. I think that's going to make some really exciting shows.
It is certainly a special time when you can turn the camera on your kids, and yeah, I think you'll like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
She comes home and says, "Dad, I want to join the fishing circuit, and I want to be a tournament fisherman." Would you encourage it, or would you?
I've already gone too far down that road. I took her out and fished 2 tournaments last year with her, and we actually filmed one for TV. And she's not at the point yet where she's going to stand on the deck and fish for 8 straight hours. But she's fast with the net, and she liked the competition. And when I said, "Do you want to do another one?" She was like, "Yeah, duh." So we'll see where that goes, right? But yeah, of course I would support it. I mean, I wouldn't be here today doing what I do with her if I didn't pursue that as a kid. So
Yeah.
Anything that has to do with whether it's hunting or fishing or the outdoors, I'm all in with it.
Well, they're not going to look back in 30 years and say, "Man, I really loved playing on that phone." They're going to say, "Oh man, I miss those times with my dad. I wish I could do it
Yeah.
again."
I wish my dad didn't take me gar fishing on the Ottawa River.
Oh man. Yeah, well, and she's done a lot. She's had a lot of firsts before I had him. I was lucky. My dad took me fishing a lot, but fishing then isn't what it is now, right? I mean, there's so much knowledge, so much available to us that when she goes fishing, she's out fishing me a lot of the times, right? Because I know what I'm doing and I'm focused on it. She's just like, "I'll try anything to catch a fish," and more often than not, trying anything works better than knowing what you're doing, I find.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? That's how many times have you got strikes when you screw up a cast?
Yeah, or
nest and
or if you're turkey hunting with me, you listen to some of the calls I mess up, and turkey comes running up, and you think, huh.
I'm on
I'm not all that when it comes to calling critters, but works for me.
that is, and that's a common theme also. Like some of the worst calling I've ever heard has come from actual live hens. It's
yeah. What? That's right.
We're just gargling. Oh, awesome.
Well, you know what? I mean, I don't know what the season holds for you guys with the way things are, but hopefully you're able to get out and bag a big old tom.
Well, we'll see. I think we've got the season opens on Sunday, and that's we've got Carlin's young lad, who I think is going to be the sort of first shooter. Will be nice if we had a double opportunity. But I'll be heading to New York at the beginning of May to get sort of the other half of my life is in the States, and that's been the biggest challenge with COVID, is being able to travel. And it's at least it's not too bad getting to the States. It's getting back, and that's
right.
That's what's it's gonna be tough. But I'm hoping for some decent weather for the April part of our season, because that's what I'll be able to partake in. So we'll see.
The beauty part of this season is there's really not a whole else to do. You can't go anywhere, so yeah, I got the time booked for the month and be sitting in the field a lot. So.
Yeah, Carlin's really fortunate with the stay-at-home order, because he can still stay at home and hunt turkeys for the entire month of May. So,
yeah,
wow.
If only I could work from a blind, but that doesn't work so well.
No, yeah, you know what happens when you start doing that.
Right.
Every time you look at that screen, that's when the turkeys are out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
Well, Mike, it really has been a pleasure to catch up with you and chat and just get eyes on you. Like I said, I've been missing seeing at the Sportsman Show, and nice to know that you and August are doing well, that things are going well at the Ontario Federation of Anglers and Hunters, and that the Angler and Hunter TV continues to be a growing success. So really pleased for you, Mike.
Great, thanks. It's great to catch up with you guys finally.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for being such a positive voice and face for hunting and fishing TV, not only in Ontario, but in Canada and North America. Keep up the great work. We know how much work TV is, and not that we're on TV a whole lot, but it's still a lot of work what we do, and we certainly appreciate it. And folks, if you are not a member of the OFAH, get on the website today, sign up.
Yep.
Absolutely.
It's you know what? I'm inclined to agree with you, Mike. If you're not a member, shame on you. But I think that everybody's probably been a member at some point, but it's easy to kind of forget, my membership ran out and, I moved and I'm not getting a letter.
I'm guilty of that.
Just hop onto the website and get
monthly,
your.
I have monthly donation. Comes
Yeah.
out of my bank account. I never see it or get reminded of it. And my membership shows up every year when it expires. So,
That's a great way to explain it, and to pay for it. Like you said, then it's just out of sight, out of mind, and you just know that you're supporting and
Yep.
helping those that are doing what they need to do so that we can all enjoy the outside.
exactly.
Oh, and it's money well spent for sure. Well, folks, Mike Miller from Angler Hunter TV. You've been listening to or watching the CWTF's Turkey Talk podcast. Thanks for tuning in this time. And don't forget, always, Ian,
Hey, keep it real, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
take care for now.
Thanks for staying with us. You have been listening to the Canadian Wild Turkey Federation's Turkey Talk podcast with your hosts, Carl and Ian from the Real Outdoor Experience. Tune in next time as we have an amazing lineup of both guests and subjects that span across the outdoors. Don't forget, get your kids outdoors, and always keep it real.